Alright everybody, I have a never before seen concept for you. You know those two Mario RPGs that we got? What if we add Luigi? The year is 2003 and the Game Boy Advance is well into its life cycle, and shockingly enough there is no original Mario game in sight. Yeah, we got a couple of quality ports here or there, but nothing in terms of a brand new adventure starring the portly plumber. Despite that, Nintendo insisted on constantly giving us the same version of Mario Bros across multiple games. Why did you do this? I don't understand. And that is where newcomers Alpha Dream come in, developing an RPG featuring not only Mario but his lesser known brother, Green Mario. You gotta remember here, at this point Luigi getting a headline role was kind of a big deal. Luigi's Mansion was the first time he was more than the typecast player too. We don't count Mario as missing in this house. So the idea of not only playing as Luigi, but both brothers at the same time in a brand new adventure? Well boy howdy, sign me up. It's also the game that added striped socks to Luigi's canon, so that's good to know.
Nintendo!
Classic. Alpha Dream is, of course, known for this series, but at the time, these devs didn't really have much under their belt. They made Hamtaro Rainbow Rescue for GBA. That's cool. Not the first and probably not the last time I'll bring up these Hamtaro games on this channel, I swear. But more interesting, Tomato Adventure. I don't really know much about it, but it looks very similar to what they would go on to work on soon after. And that's good enough for me. It's an RPG that never left Japan, will probably never get any recognition from Nintendo ever again, and will be quite a while before a fan translation is completed so I can understand why tomatoes are the main aesthetic here. Not gonna lie, I'm very confused. As of late 2019, Alpha Dream shut their doors after filing for bankruptcy. Now this doesn't mean that the series is done with, need I remind you, Nintendo owns both Mario and Luigi, but it's definitely the end of an era. This is a very fascinating franchise that I feel doesn't really get talked about all that much. They just happen to be the Mario RPGs that you find on portable consoles, and that's it. 5 games and 2 remakes, that is certainly an impressive lineup, and I figured now is a better time than ever to take a look at what this entire series is all about. Starting off with, of course, Superstar Saga. Does anybody else remember when Nintendo advertised this new sub-series using live-action shots of 2 boys playing around? That was weird, can't say I don't have a few more questions, but hey, I got the game anyway, so clearly they were onto something. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, aka the game where Mario and Luigi dance. Following the trend the original Super Mario RPG started, Superstar Saga tells the story of the Mushroom Kingdom under peril from a brand new threat. That of Cackletta and her assistant, Fawful. After disguising themselves to meet up with Princess Peach, they managed to steal her voice and replace it with bombs. Whoa, that's pretty sick, dude. And this is all to take control of the powerful Bean Star in order to take over the kingdom. So it's time to, of course, bring in the Mario Bros to set things right. I always loved this part here, getting to play as Toad right at the beginning. It is the only time in the game you can do this, but it does a good job letting you know right off the bat that this is going to be a bit of a different journey. I mean, for crying out loud, Toad sees Mario naked. I wouldn't want to wish that upon my worst enemies. During this opening segment, 2 of the series' prominent features start to shine. First off, the humor, primarily from Luigi. Paper Mario was certainly charming and funny as well, but more of that stuff is certainly not a bad thing. Luigi didn't even want to be on this adventure, but my boy, he didn't have a choice. And all of the original designs for the characters too, it's so cool. Whether it be these quirky redesigns of series staple characters, or brand new ones that are very much out there. It's just very pleasant and refreshing to look at. And the bosses in particular are really neat. One of them is like a hermit crab with a Christmas tree shell. Finally, my fantasy fulfilled. And we have all of this on top of exploring a brand new land, the Bean Kingdom. I don't know what compelled the developers to make a land based on beans, but hey, it works. As you progress, the story stays pretty straightforward. A couple hours in, you actually get to encounter Cackletta and the Bean Star. Tackling the main antagonist in a battle that isn't the final one is something the series would go on to do quite often, and it's kinda cool to see. But naturally, of course, that's not the end. Just when you think things are all nice and safe, Fawful takes an injured Bowser and implants him with Cackletta's soul, creating the incredibly disturbing looking Bowletta, another trend this series would work with in the future. Oh, and why is Bowser injured, you may be asking? Well, that's because after Bowser was shot out of a cannon and presumably lost his memory, this little guy here, Popple, threw a mask on him, called him Rookie, and recruited him as his partner. And after a battle that led them flying way up into the sky on an enraged Beanstar, and just as Bowser's memory is getting back to him, they all fall off and scatter. Bing bang boom, Bowser looks scary now. It's totally the lack of nose and the addition of breastplates. Cackletta really knew how to assert her dominance. At the core of the experience, yeah, this is a pretty standard, lighthearted RPG. Dare I say, a gateway RPG. A game that follows all the tropes of the genre, but simplifies them to a bare bones level to keep things straightforward and at the forefront, fun. It's a style that the previous Mario RPGs went for, but there was a lot of stuff here that makes it different than those previous attempts. And it all lies within the brothers' actions being at your fingertips at all times. Well, until one of them gets like abducted or something for a while. This game is bonkers. One brother is controlled by A and the other with B. That simple approach keeps this entire quest engaging, from controlling each of their jumps for platforming or timing their dodges when being attacked. And yeah, platforming, there's a ton of it here, and it feels great to do. And throughout the adventure, you also gain a bunch of new abilities that can be used for traversal in the overworld, and new attacks for battles. And speaking of, the battles retain their action command system as well, a must-have for RPGs of the Mario variety. And something pretty cool that I always appreciated, you learn the majority of your new moves from other duos. They really took this whole red and green pair working together thing, and went all out with it. And it immediately gives this series a unique identity. Admittedly though, the fire and lightning moves that you get do seem like a bit of an afterthought. Unlike jumping or using a hammer, there's rarely any benefit of using them in battle, and the overworld puzzles that you do use them in are far from clever, but hey, at least we get to see the brothers getting a massage. That's always nice. And then we have Bean Kingdom itself. I love this place. On paper, a lot of it does seem like your traditional Mario flair, just with beans, but a lot was actually done here to let you know that these aren't the lands that you're familiar with. For one, each section is named after some sort of synonym for laugh. Hoo Hoo Village, Chuckle Huck Woods, Tee Hee Valley. That's really clever, I like it, really adds to the cartoony charm here. And admittedly, since this is on the GBA, I remember thinking to myself for a while that the world felt pretty small. But an hour or so into the game, at the top of Hoo Hoo Mountain, there's a telescope that you can interact with. Suddenly, whoa, this place is actually huge, and you get to visit every inch of it. It's a good thing you have your trusted passport on you at all times. It may seem pretty minor, but I would argue this goes a long way to world building. There's only so much you can convey on a small screen, so getting to see this huge landscape in the palm of your hands, I love it. And there is such a handful of memorable moments sprinkled throughout the entire landscape. Moving from one area to another via a minecart segment, or riding atop of Luigi transformed into a surfboard. You get to explore a brewery that's creating a ton of the popular drink, Chocola Cola, before fighting a monster made out of Chocola Cola. After going inside Woo-Hoo University, you are being greeted by the viruses from Dr. Mario. And these spouts of water that you find early on, you can get Mario fat off of them. This game does everything. There's also that part where Luigi dresses up as Princess Peach and, not gonna lie, he nails the look. Oh, and that's right, there's also that part where Gino shows up to explain that one random minigame, and then that would be the last time he ever made an official appearance aside from a costume in Smash Brothers. I'll never forget. Playing this game is a ton of fun, but as time goes on, signs of first game in the series-itis do start to show. Things that later games would do better that end up showing some slight faults with this first attempt. Unlike the rest of the series, there are no gimmicks tying anything together. It is pure Mario and Luigi gameplay, which is fine, but just know that this is the only game in the series to not have some sort of overlying concept aside from purely going on an adventure. And also, the game is pretty short, clocking in at about 10 plus hours. Which again, totally fine, but it is also super easy. Whenever you level up, you have a choice as to where some skill points will go. Just keep adding points to attack and this game is a total cakewalk, nobody stands a chance. It's not bad since it's all still a matter of mastering the timing based moves you have access to, but it's certainly odd to have really no incentive to grow the other stats, unless you want to just make the game harder for yourself. The stash stat is pretty neat though, raising this grows your chances of critical hits and lowers item prices. Cool. I just don't see any reason to put any extra points into it. Granted, I guess it's not too different than playing Paper Mario and strictly upgrading flower points, but I still feel like you have to strategize around your decision there. Here, whether or not you main the attack stat really just makes the game easier or harder for yourself. That's it. The simplest bosses that took a few tries for me when I was younger don't stand a chance anymore. They go down in like a minute. Honestly, I know these were small complaints, but they're the only ones I have. I love this game to death. I just don't want to come off as biased, okay? Okay, thank you. Regardless of how you lay out your stat points, the end of the adventure is still pretty cool. After all the trials and tribulations you face along your journey, you eventually travel to Bowser's floating castle, rocking that same brick and lava aesthetic that we're all familiar with. And within, you get to fight the returning Koopalings. I always loved this series of fights. While most people remember New Super Mario Bros. Wii as the return of the Koopalings, yeah, this game did it earlier. It's a great use of them too. Each one is presented with a different gimmick rather than being slightly more powerful attack sponges. I am a big fan. The platforming here is really solid too. Bowser's castle in this game is just sweet overall. And then there's the final Cackletta fight. Oh man, the final fight. The initial form is a bit of a pushover if you keep attacking her head on, especially with an all-out attack stat. Holy cow, like 30 seconds is all it took, I swear. But then she inhales you and you get to fight Cackletta's soul. The atmosphere is eerie. The music, heart-pounding. You start with 1 health. Okay, yeah, this is cool and all, but it is also a bit of a problem. While this would definitely set the stage for future epic final fights in the franchise, a common complaint with this game in particular is the difficulty spike with this encounter. And to be honest, it is the reason why I do like to play this game on the self-induced, quote, easy mode. Basically, it's a fight that you can get good at, but the game doesn't properly prepare you for what's in store. Dodging attacks is a lot more difficult, opening up the weak spot takes a decent amount of time, she'll regularly heal herself, and if you screw up and die, you gotta go back and do the fight before it once again. Since I've beaten this game multiple times already, this is a total breeze, but I have heard many stories of people who have played this game for the first time hating this fight, and I can see why. If you are at all familiar with this series, you already know that final battles here are a big deal, and this one, unfortunately, is one of the weaker ones. But hey, with enough perseverance, Cackletta's soul is gone for good. Bowser returns to normal, and before he wakes up, we leave him to fall with the crashing ship. Poor guy didn't know what hit him. With the day saved, the gang ride off into the sunset, wrapping up the first adventure in this new series. At the end of the day, Superstar Saga is a simple, fun, and funny RPG. There's like that one escort mission in the desert that kinda sucks, and there's a fetch quest near the end of the game that does feel like a bit of padding, but they're all relatively minor blemishes, honestly. If anything, that final fetch quest is the only time in the game you're encouraged to explore the entirety of Bean Bean Kingdom, so you can get to the paths that you pass over by going through the main adventure. It is definitely padding, that's just what it is, but I always enjoyed running around to gather fruit, to feed the different colored Yoshis, to spice up their special movie theater. That's just cool. Any place showing a Kirby and Starfy movie has my support 100%. There's a few side quests that you can tackle too, like making a bunch of shirt patterns. Minigames that are mandatory during the adventure have some high score challenges when you return to them, and probably the most famous of all, beans. Back in the Star Beans Cafe, you can take a ton of different beans that you've collected along the journey and assist Professor E. Gadd with making a bunch of different blends to gain some stat points and also obtain some extra prizes. But what's known about this quest isn't what's here, it's what isn't here. Taking a look at the cut content from the game shows that not only were you originally making these blends for E. Gadd, but also for other Nintendo characters. Captain Olimar, Samus, Link, Fox McCloud, the Excitebike Racer. This would have been so cool in the final product. You already get items based on these characters too. It makes their removal seem all the weirder. Sadly, it would be a few more years before we get to see Wario letting his gas loose onto the world. But after all this time, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remains one of the most memorable Mario adventures. It is part of the 1-2 punch that made Luigi a character worth caring about, and it is easily one of the finest games the GBA has to offer. Oh yeah, the 3DS version. 14 years later, we were graced with a remake on the much more powerful 3DS, and it's pretty sweet. I wanted to focus on the original release for this video since it holds up so well, but to be honest, this is probably the best way to experience this game nowadays. It looks better, it sounds cleaner, there's a ton of quality of life improvements like full analog control, there's an easier way to swap between all your bros abilities. When you're in battle, the alternate bros moves are now separated from the original ones, which is awesome because now you're not required to remember a few button combos. And you can speed up cutscenes, thank God. There is amiibo support as well, which I mean, it's a thing. We got some neat figures out of it, so that's nice, but the content itself, not too compelling, honestly. The biggest argument against this version is the, quote, lack of charm in the transition to a new console. And trust me, I love me a good pixelated aesthetic as much as the next guy, but damn, this game still looks super good. There are certainly elements that should have been brought over to maintain that original identity, like, why did you change the tree? That was far from the biggest issue about the original game. But when you look at the entire picture, it's really not too much of a downgrade, I feel. And unlike the other 3DS games in this series that opted for 3D worlds, for this remake, it plays on 2D art instead, with much more advanced lighting effects, and it is pure eye candy. This also gives us a smooth 60 FPS too, and man, it is so good to see up close. And even though Cacletta is still relatively tough here, it's like one of the only things in this game that's a 3D model, and that's pretty sick. There's no Geno anymore though, that kinda sucks. And those movie posters that I mentioned earlier got changed to more fitting art for the series, which I guess is understandable. I still want a Starfy movie though. And this game also doesn't support 3D, I know, contain your tears. In general though, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Just don't play that new Bowser's Minions mode. Wow, it's so bad. It provides more story details to show you what's happening when Mario and Luigi are off somewhere else, and that's kinda neat, but oh man, is this ever the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. It's like the squad building thing of a bunch of the game's enemies, and as a commander, you issue orders to your group, and on paper, sounds pretty cool, kinda sounds like Pikmin, but in practice, oh man, there is so much time that goes by with you barely doing anything. I can't imagine a single instance where this isn't the worst thing ever. This Beans War. I genuinely appreciate the effort to add something new here, I do, but I would argue the core game is so strong, this shoehorned side mode simply wasn't necessary. At the end of the day, it is nice having all of these games in this series now playable on 3DS. I love that Game Boy Advance version, I have so much nostalgia for it, but it's really cool being able to now have everything under one roof. That makes this remake worth it for that alone. Yeah, you're gonna want to remember I said that for the future. If you enjoy Mario RPGs, you already know that Superstar Saga is one of the finest. It does sort of fumble at the very end, and that entire side mode in the 3DS version is hot garbage, but on the whole, fantastic game, and it is the great start to a fantastic series with many highs and many lows. But let's say you're not into RPGs, but for whatever reason, this cartridge in particular really stuck out to you. Well, need I remind you, you can totally bypass the core adventure and just play Arcade Mario Bros. Why did they do this? The Game Boy Advance is home to a fantastic library of games. Even when you just look at Nintendo's output, we got great new IP like Drill Dozer and Golden Sun, series that made their localized debut in great fashion like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem, and awesome entries to long-running franchises like Metroid Fusion, Minish Cap, Wario Land 4, so many good games. Nintendo treated their properties really well on their new advanced piece of portable hardware. Except for Mario. Did you ever notice that despite being the golden child, Mario's lineup on the Game Boy Advance is pretty damn sad? Superstar Saga was awesome, the same can be said for Mario vs. Donkey Kong. The sports games weren't all that bad. Party was though. Oh god, Pinball Land. I keep trying to forget that one. One of the more interesting things about the GBA's life is that we never got an original Mario platformer. All these years later, despite being as successful as it was, that's really weird. That being said though, obviously we did get a few games that would otherwise fit the bill. The Super Mario Advance series. Super Mario Advance. One could easily see this and think, oh yeah, you know, just a bunch of Mario ports. And somebody else could think, oh yeah, that time Nintendo was very chronologically confused. Mario 2, then World, Yoshi's Island, and then 3. Oh no, Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 is still one of the best titles Nintendo has ever come up with. But you may also notice that there's one main Mario game of the era missing from that list. The original Super Mario Bros. There was a port to the GBA as part of the classic NES series, certainly a cool novelty at the time, but now, squished Mario just comes off as really cursed. But in all actuality, Super Mario Advance was simply following the trend set back on the Game Boy Color with Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. It's not like it's all too special nowadays or anything like that, but it is easily a better version of the classic. Screen crunch is the most notable thing about this, so it's definitely not the most ideal way to play the game, but it's actually not that bad. Probably because I've already played these stages like 100 times over at this point, so it's all muscle memory by now. You can keep shrinking the screen. I'll still find my way to the end. The cool thing though is all of the extras that got thrown in. There's a couple new interface additions like a main menu and even a world map. That's pretty cute. There's this fancy new challenge mode where levels are now populated by 5 red coins, as well as a hidden Yoshi egg, and there's even a bonus challenge to score enough points. This really retools how you approach a Mario stage, and it's a lot of fun. You versus Boo, this mode is so cool. This is a series of brand new stages all based around racing and blocking your opponent with these special boxes. You can also go through this with another player, which is really awesome. They brought this game back out of nowhere for one of the Nintendo World Championships, and it was genuinely one of the most exciting parts of that night. There's a couple of extra goodies too, most of which actually use the old Game Boy camera. That's kinda neat. And even the sequel, Lost Levels, is here as well, under the title 4 Super Players, which, you know, more bang for your buck, I guess. Game still sucks though. Adding new content to classic Mario games like this would presumably be the basis for the games that would soon after hit the Game Boy Advance. Now, I'm assuming that most of you have already played these games, at least the originals on the NES and Super Nintendo, so I'm gonna spare you a legitimate review of the core games here, because, yeah man, hot take, Super Mario World is pretty good. I'm glad I finally got to get that off my chest. Instead though, I think it's interesting to see how these versions differ from their originals. They didn't just port these games and call it a day, each one includes a handful of differences, either due to the console that they were released on, or simply being a cool new thing that you can't find anywhere else. One of the most notable inclusions is that of a retooled arcade Mario Bros. Yeah, that extra menu option that's also found in Superstar Saga, all 4 of the Mario Advance games feature this as well. All of the box arts boast of this really fancy 4-player multiplayer, and I hate to burst your bubble here, I really do, but it's just for Mario Bros. And for years, even back when I talked about Superstar Saga, I never knew why they kept including this in so many of their games. But leave it to the comments section of all places to let me know why. I never realized this, but as long as you have multiple GBAs, a link cable, and at least 2 of these games, then you instantly have access to something you can play multiplayer. It seemed like just this weird inside joke for so long, but suddenly, it makes a ton of sense. So hey, kudos for keeping portable multiplayer alive, even if I had no idea what you were doing for so many years. When it comes to the main core of these, they are the same games that you remember. Mario 2 and 3 are more based on their versions that were found in Super Mario All-Stars though, which is still pretty cool. Obviously, they're more graphically advanced than the NES versions, and personally, those are the versions that I grew up with, so they're my preferred versions in the first place. However, as you've also probably noticed, the color palettes are a lot more washed out than those originals. They just look kinda odd when put up side by side with their sources. Well, actually, this was done to compensate for the darker screen on the early GBAs. The brighter colors simply made things pop out more. If you've ever played the GBA port of Donkey Kong Country, it is very apparent there as well. However, in between the releases of Advance 3 and 4, in early 2003, Nintendo released the GBA SP, featuring a backlight, a feature that other handhelds were already doing years prior. Holy cow, I'm surprised they really got away with this for so long. And, well, since it wasn't really much of an issue anymore, the portable version of Super Mario Bros. 3 more so resembles the original color palette. I never minded the more washed out colors, but it's still nice to see a more accurate design here. As far as the gameplay goes, Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island are the most similar to their console counterparts. There really isn't that much here that makes these a whole lot more than the Super Nintendo versions on the go. There is now an opening cutscene for World, showing Mario and Luigi enjoying the island while Peach gets kidnapped along the way. basically the same exact thing that happened in New Super Mario Bros. 2. Once you dive in though, this is certainly Super Mario World, alright? They did manage to fix that one stray pixel in the original's title screen, so that's really nice. Yeah, that's totally a thing. I was cursed with this knowledge, so now I'm paying it forward. Luigi also plays differently here, accompanied by a brand new look. In the All-Stars version of Mario World, he had an original sprite there as well, but he still played exactly like Mario. Here, he falls more in line with how he looked in the first Advance game, and he also has some of his typical control quirks, like a higher jump and worse traction. Hey, it's minor, but it's still nice being able to play a familiar game in a slightly different way. The dragon coins are also more useful now, being an actual collectible that works towards 100% completion rather than just being there. Finding all of them gets you a nifty little cutscene, and then all of the coins just return to their original locations. But now they have Peach's face on them instead. Oh, thank goodness, that's what the original game was missing. Yoshi's Island has even fewer changes. There's a new world total screen. That's nice. The red coins are harder to distinguish now. That's not nice. There's a new world select map. Oh, I found this new room in level 1-8. That wasn't there before. Yeah, this is just Yoshi's Island. The big new thing that really stands out is 6 brand new secret levels, one in each world. They're all much bigger in size than the original stages, and they're really fun. Difficult to fully complete as well. I mean, damn, okay. This ends up making the overall level count a nice even 60, and that is just satisfying to see. Otherwise, yeah, man, this is Yoshi's Island on the go. Did you ever find it weird how often they kept porting this version of the game and not the Super Nintendo original? 3DS ambassadors and Wii U owners got the GBA port, despite SNES games being a totally viable option on both. Did the fuzzies make the Super Nintendo version too much of a pipe dream, so you had to make an entirely new piece of hardware to finally bring the game back to us? Ultimately, both versions are good, but since they're more or less identical, the console version offers undoubtedly the more definitive experience. Aside from those 6 levels, they're pretty cool. Now, I know I'm gonna go out of order here, but hell, didn't stop Nintendo. Let's talk about the first Super Mario Advance, since this one has a few more noticeable differences. First and foremost, I always loved the opening cutscene, the characters emerging from the shadows before things widen up for the main attraction. That little window is actually the exact resolution of the original Game Boy, and considering this was a launch title for the GBA, a console that can also play those older games, it is a pretty effective way of showing off the graphical upgrade of the new system. Now, why they chose Super Mario Bros. 2 as the game to kick things off, I'll never know. But here we are. Some of the changes here are smaller, simple bells and whistles. They can now stretch and mangle sprites whenever they want to, and they never once waste an opportunity to prove it. I don't know what this is. I don't think anybody's been able to figure this one out. There are a bunch of extra large Shy Guys that can now be found in random spots, and I gotta say, kudos on the jiggle physics. I'm a big fan. You can now tear the ribbon off of Birdo, rectifying the main complaint everybody had with the original. We now have red coins to collect, and there's also an extra Yoshi challenge mode, hiding a few Yoshi eggs in all of the levels, no doubt influenced by Super Mario Bros. Deluxe before it. There's even a brand new boss with Row Birdo. Never seen before, never seen since. It just sort of exists here in this bubble as an interesting piece of Mario trivia and nothing more. Otherwise, yeah, this is a modified Super Mario Bros. 2 on GBA. This was the first game I got for the console, and I played it a ton, so while it may have been a bit of an odd choice, I'd say it was a good one. And all that's left is Super Mario Bros. 3, and on the surface, we have another faithful adaptation of the classic. We got another new opening cutscene, that's pretty nice. Anytime stories that previously only existed in the game's manual gets thrown into the game itself is always nice in my opinion. Otherwise though, what makes this version interesting isn't in the main game, it's in all of the extras. Allow me to reintroduce the e-reader. I've kinda gone over this weird peripheral already in the past, but during its short existence, Mario Advance 4 is definitely Nintendo's strongest attempt to get people to care, even packing in some cards with new copies of the game. By linking up a GBA with the game to another GBA with an e-reader, what do you mean this didn't take off? You're able to put in new content into this game. Replays of high-level gameplay, new items for your inventory, including the cape from Super Mario World, which is honestly just really surreal, and easily the coolest of all, brand new stages, all accessible in the special World E. You got really good level designs, enemies from other games, grass you can pick up from Mario 2. All of these years later, this is still such a wild inclusion. And it really sucks that barely anybody got to experience it. I had a few of these cards growing up, but man, nowadays these things are really not all that easy to come by. You can definitely get them by a simple online search, but they are nowhere near as prominent as, say, some random series of amiibo cards. And it didn't help that only about a third of all of the cards actually released outside of Japan, leaving over 20 levels unavailable to unlock by the intended means. And that is such a shame because this is, without a doubt, the most interesting part of the entire Super Mario Advance series, and easily the best thing the e-reader's ever done. Yeah, it's finally time to dethrone taking NES Pinball and splitting it up across 5 cards. The time has finally come. That's no longer cool. It never was cool. But just when you think this story is over, well, leave it to Nintendo to re-release Super Mario Advance 4 on the Wii U's Virtual Console with all of the e-reader levels in tow. The content has been accessible via hacking for years already, but to have an official way to play these otherwise thought to be lost stages is really, really cool. One of the underappreciated highlights of the Wii U's life. And yeah, that about sums up the entire Super Mario Advance series. Just pretty cool. Versions that do go beyond basic simple ports with plenty of interesting changes found throughout them. I think the smaller screen size easily disqualifies them from being the definitive way to play these games, but if you grew up with the GBA, chances are this is how you got to experience them. And ultimately, they're not bad versions of these games. Looking back, it is forever going to be weird that we never got an original Mario platformer on the Game Boy Advance, but enough effort was done with these titles to still make them relatively worthwhile, and this mindset would definitely continue on when Super Mario 64 got a similar treatment on the DS. But that's for another time. If you consider yourself a bit of a Mario historian, then I definitely recommend checking these games out. Just be mindful that if you do pick these games up on the Wii U, they totally lack multiplayer support. So all of those crazy arcade Mario Bros multiplayer sessions that you were just starting to plan out, you're gonna have to do it elsewhere, I'm sorry. Damn it, Nintendo, you were this close. This is why the Wii U failed. Luigi's Mansion is a pretty fascinating franchise. Every time a new one gets revealed, it comes out of nowhere. The original was hyped up to be the latest in the Mario series before showing off something entirely new. Dark Moon was revealed amidst a handful of already existing 3DS games at E3. The remake of the first game was thrown into a Nintendo Direct like it was no big deal. And then during the hype cycle for said remake, just when we were expecting new details, we got a new game instead. Luigi's Mansion 3. No subtitle for this one, huh? Yeah, that's gonna be weird for Americans. To be fair, we should have saw it coming. Luigi shooting a plunger in the Simon Belmont Smash trailer? What? Why? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, okay. Ah, this looks very peaceful. What could possibly go wrong? The story begins with a Toad attempting to drive a large bus. I'm on board with this game already. Mario, Peach, and a few other Toads are going on vacation, and this time they didn't forget to invite Luigi. And he even brought his dog Polterpup, so cute, easily the best thing to come out of Dark Moon. Everyone's been invited to a special hotel called the Last Resort. Oh, something's gonna go terribly wrong. Things, of course, don't seem to be quite right. Everyone has these weird faces, none of them have feet. That's a big red flag right there. And the name of the owner is Helen Gravely. That's practically an Ace Attorney name with how blatantly evil it is. But we do have this.
Oh, doggy.
Damn, this is gonna be a good game. And of course, things do go horribly wrong. It turns out that Helen is a big fan of King Boo, and she's freed him from his portrait prison. Seeking revenge once more, he manages to seal everybody in their own portraits, again, and before he manages to take one final victim, Luigi makes his escape, jumping down the laundry chute down to the basement of the hotel. make it to the top of the hotel, and save everybody. I like this premise a lot. It gets to the point and doesn't really pretend to be any more mysterious than it is. Dark Moon slipping in these King Boo teases, acting as if his appearance is some sort of surprise, and saving the Mario being kidnapped twist until the near end of the game, it made any sort of tension feel pretty forced in my opinion, as minor as it sounds. Here, our goal is laid out to us immediately. Now go and do some ghost busting. I know it's not technically a mansion we're exploring, it's a hotel, but hey, check this out. Luigi is canonically allergic to dust. I'm pretty sure this is character development. Soon after, with our flashlight in hand, we find an upgraded Poltergust. We get to play with Polterpup for a little bit. I love this dog to death. Ha, you get it? Death because it's dead. Deal with a few bad ghosties, regain access to the dark light, and free Egad from his portrait prison. And do you remember how the professor was so annoying in the last game? He would just call you endlessly and it was one of the game's biggest problems? Well, to make up for that, they gave him a run cycle. This is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Oh no, Grandpa's stuck again. He also gives you a virtual boy. Never trust anybody that gives you a virtual boy. And it's as good a time as any to mention just how much animation we got here. It is arguably the best part of the entire package. In the past, Egad has always said this really charming gibberish, but now his mouth moves to said gibberish, and it's really weird. Oh man, that's so weird. Whether or not you like Dark Moon, it is a safe assumption to say that the cutscenes were the best part of that game, and the attention solely given to the animation in this sequel, it's incredible. Every cutscene is just so filled with life and energy, and when we get to Luigi, who lacks both of those things, it makes for some of the game's strongest laughs. Hey, look at this. Here's Polterpup rubbing its butt across the floor. Have I mentioned how much I love it yet? You know, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle also had a ton of really in-depth animation with its cutscenes. And just like here in Luigi's Mansion, that was some of the best parts about that game. I am so excited to see this much charm and more in future Mario games. But how about the actual act of exploring the hotel? Well, I'm happy to report, by God, they damn near fixed everything. There's only one building to explore once again, and there's no longer any instances of regularly being pulled back to Egad's lab to stop the adventure. That's all gone. I mean, okay, it happens like once or twice really early on, but after that, it's gone. Yeah, just explore until your thumbs fall off, no worries. And what's great is despite being in only one building, each floor is essentially a different stage, all having unique themes that go above and beyond anything the last game did with its multiple mansions. It does sorta stray further away from the creepy atmosphere the first game had, but I was so entertained from start to finish, I really didn't mind. If anything, I'm just kind of confused as to why some areas are as brightly lit as they are. Dark lighting within the rooms were the whole reason Luigi had a flashlight in the first place. Here though, I mean, come on man, you're just wasting batteries. Between this and leaving his TV on in Dark Moon, we can very clearly tell that he has no problem wasting money on energy. The movie set was probably my favorite of all the floors. You stumble onto a handful of blue screen sets, and looking through the camera at them totally transforms the scene. It's brilliant. As a result of the floor setup, the game takes an almost formulaic approach. The point is to constantly collect elevator buttons to move higher and higher up the hotel. And aside from these two instances where you're stopped by this dumb cat, which just feels like a whole lot of padding in my opinion, it feels like you're constantly making progress.
I'm a star!
Man, I love him so much. Each button is also held by a boss ghost. Yes, they did it. They finally did the portrait ghosts again. I love this so much, man. They all match their themed floor perfectly, and each encounter leads to a pretty interesting boss fight that requires a bit of puzzle solving. Honestly, the only thing I really miss is a bit of flavor text like we got in the first game. It didn't really add a ton, but it would have given these characters that much more personality. The only time we really got a lot of that was with Morty, a starving film director who makes a movie out of the battle that you have. And once you finish that, he flies off to edit the movie. You can stop him from fulfilling his dreams, but I just don't really have the heart to do so. Well, until the near end of the game at least. You know, he has to finish the movie at some point, give it a few hours, and then we'll go ahead and check in on our good pal Morty. It's gonna be a friendly encounter, I assure you. Oh yeah, at that point, all bets are off. I gotta get my achievements.
Oh boy, phew.
Oh yeah.
Naturally, we have to go for smaller ghosts as well. Combat has been totally changed here, and I'm really not sure if I like it or not. You fill up a meter similar to Dark Moon, but here in 3, you're then able to slam them onto the floor a handful of times, taking off a good chunk of their health. You take off the same amount every time, so there is a bit of strategy in dropping the health just enough to make one slam session take it out completely, and honestly, it is super satisfying, especially when you slam them into other ghosts. Oh, that's really nice. However, this also makes the encounters easier than ever. Half of the fun before was overcoming the struggle of the ghosts pulling away from you, and any struggle feels nearly non-existent here. And when you're in crowds, surrounded by them, sometimes they just watch you during the capturing process. What, you guys enjoying the show? At the very least, they do look better than the ones from Dark Moon. They're still occasionally a bit wacky and goofy, but it's a lot more downplayed than it was before, which is nice. We just see the standard ones in a ton of different outfits instead. I still prefer the blank stares and cackling laughs from the first game, but since we have bigger threats of the bosses now, it ends up feeling like less of an issue. And actually, if anything, it matters even less because combat takes a huge backseat to just pure exploration. Capturing ghosts is still a major component, of course, but this game is all about taking in your surroundings and mainly just getting a ton of money. Luigi has his priorities straight, I can appreciate that. Doing basically anything here rewards you with a bunch of cash, and it's really satisfying getting it all into your vacuum. The physics in this game are pretty wild. I think the developers are just trying to show off at times. There is a shop that you can use your money in, but the options are pretty limited, so you're probably better off just hoarding all of it instead. Using a rope attached to plungers that you can shoot justifies the entire pulling and slamming mechanic. There's a brand new jumping mechanic to help you get past some obstacles that are in your way or clear out a bunch of stuff around you. The dark light is no longer time limited, which is awesome. You can also once again yell for Mario's name whenever you want.
Mario.
It's not as intense as it was in the first game, but it's still nice to see. And yes, apparently this was in Dark Moon as well, but only after you see Mario for the first time. Thank you for the dozens of people who taught me that.
Mario.
Awesome. And of course, Luigi. A shoehorned co-op mode in Mansion 3DS is now a full-fledged feature of this entire adventure. With a click of the right stick, you spawn it from its vacuum cleaner jail cell, and Luigi suddenly goes unconscious. But now you have the means to get through plenty of barriers that Luigi himself isn't able to get through. Since it's so easy to get Luigi in and out of action, it never ends up feeling like a bother. It's actually pretty entertaining getting Luigi to slip through grates, help Luigi get to places that he can't reach otherwise, or sacrifice him for the greater good. It's okay, Luigi is immortal, we're now stuck with it for the rest of our lives. There are even a few times where Luigi is held captive and is slowly killed, with Luigi being the only means to rescue him. That is the true hero here. And it tastes of coffee apparently, so that's something. And Luigi is usually the key to finding the floor's handful of shiny gems, 6 on each one. Dark Moon had gems as well, but they were spread across all of the missions for a single mansion, and you wouldn't really know which mission you could or couldn't get one in. It was pretty annoying. Here though, it is much more enjoyable to go for, since there's usually unique environments or puzzles tied to them. They ended up actually being a major joy to collect. You don't really get anything great for doing it, but at least getting them is a good time. Similarly, the boos return as well, acting sort of how they did in Dark Moon, though it really feels like they were just kind of thrown in just because the previous games had them. They're not really all that satisfying to find or capture. Okay, maybe capturing them is kind of fun. Getting both boos and gems are really the only reason to backtrack to floors that you've already completed, but since the gems are the only thing that feel well spaced out throughout an entire floor, no matter how crammed said floor is, the boos just feel unnecessary, honestly. And going on this conversation of comparing things to Dark Moon, the Toads return as well, once again acting like an escort mission, the few times that you do get to play with them.
It's me. Luigi.
but you're able to shoot them into glass, and they really like it, so it's okay in my book. Oh man, there's a high five button too! 10 out of 10 game mechanic. And now it's about that time where we discuss the end of the game. King Boo is at the top of the hotel. Surprise! There's a pretty simplistic battle on the roof with an easy to figure out attack pattern, and then it's kinda done in no time. It's honestly pretty underwhelming. I guess the whole idea of shooting bombs into his mouth is like a weird throwback to that King Boo fight in Mario Sunshine? But that's probably a major stretch. This is fine at best. I just hope that if we get another game, King Boo trapping people in portraits, it doesn't happen again. We get it, the king has a weird thing for framed pictures, but it's time to move on. As a result of the battle, the hotel crumbles to the ground. Luigi accepts his fate since, again, he's immortal, and just like last time, thanks to the dark light, everybody is saved. But all of the ghosts are upset to have lost their home, so Egad takes it upon himself to set up a task force to build a brand new one. And this is where all of that money that you've been collecting comes in. Yeah, just like the first game, the new building that you get is dependent on how much money you have. Pretty cool. It's also another reason why you shouldn't really buy anything in the shop. It ruins your rank. That's no good. The game doesn't really warn you ahead of time that they're gonna do the whole ranking thing again, so just take my advice. It's a pretty cute ending, not as charming as Dark Moon's, but like that game, the last thing we see is Polterpup sleeping in Luigi's lap. I have no complaints. And that wraps up Luigi's Mansion 3. There are also some multiplayer modes on top of the main adventure. Making its return is the Scare Scraper, where now up to 8 people rummage through randomly designed floors to complete a specific task, and then you keep moving up and up and up the tower until you make it to the roof for a boss fight against the returning Boolossus. Pretty cool. And this is so much better than it was in the last game, partially due to the better controls, but also because each floor has a random objective rather than a set number of pre-established ones. And there's also plenty more opportunities for legitimate cooperation. This is a whole lot of fun. You know, I didn't really expect too much after Dark Moon's mode, but this is a really good time. And then there's the brand new Scream Park, a handful of proper minigames using some mechanics that are found in the main adventure. It's pretty entertaining, you know, it's neat to have an extra reason to pop this game in every now and then, even though minigames like this are probably the last thing I thought Luigi's Mansion needed, but fun is fun, so I'm cool with it. So yeah, Luigi's Mansion 3, damn fine game, way better than I thought it was gonna be. As for whether or not it's better than the first game, that's really hard to say. Simply speaking purely on atmosphere, Mansion 1 has still yet to be topped in my opinion. And since it's so short, I will still return to this game constantly for years to come. But man, I still loved nearly everything here in Luigi's Mansion 3. Based on variety, charm, how much fun it is to simply explore, how amazing it is to just see Luigi do anything, this game is a fantastic achievement, and I'm really excited to see what comes next from Next Level Games. Dark Moon was a fun game, don't get me wrong, but that first adventure, that was something special. And then we have Luigi's Mansion 3, which is really special as well, just in a different way. Now, if we continue down the Resident Evil timeline here, over the shoulder Luigi's Mansion next? Best game Nintendo's ever made. Yoshi's Island is so damn good, dude. Where to even begin with this game? It is damn near perfection. This game took Yoshi, who was a mere side character at the time, a tool in Super Mario World more or less, and expanded that character and their world to such an incredible degree. Rather than going for a traditional art style, the game goes for a living coloring book aesthetic, with outlines so bold and so sharp. Oh, it's beautiful. Fantastic level variety featuring many different landscapes and challenges from start to finish. An absolutely legendary soundtrack with memorable tunes from top to bottom. A pretty original concept as well that fits right into the Mario universe, making Baby Mario a worthwhile character after all. Despite the whole crying thing, he did learn how to play golf too, you know what, good for him. The egg mechanic was super neat as well, allowing you to aim, shoot, and ricochet off walls to your heart's content, as long as you're properly stocked up, of course. Yoshi can also transform into vehicles now too. Why not? There are no rules anymore. The boss fights too, so good, taking regular enemies, both new and old, and simply make them big. It's so simple but so brilliantly executed. And the final battle with Baby Bowser, wow, easily one of the best fights in Nintendo's history, and the adventure culminates in a beautiful musical piece for the credits. God, this game is amazing. Even the Game Boy Advance version is solid. It's not as good, of course, but still totally a worthwhile shot at that game. I could go on for quite a while about this, but Yoshi's Island is simply a fantastic game. It's a hard game, like really hard at times, but other than that, it is fantastic through and through. But the thing is, I think a lot of you guys already know that. If you haven't played this game by now, you should definitely get on that, but most of us can appreciate the goodness of this game. But the thing is, Nintendo knew it as well, so over the years, they've tried to recapture the magic and the glory with a sequel. Two of them. Neither of which on a home console, strictly on the DS and 3DS, and nobody talks about these, despite how well loved the first game is. I wonder if there's a reason that is. Yoshi's Island DS was released in 2006, 11 years after the original. It kinda came out of nowhere too. This was announced via a logo reveal back at that E3. Boy, what hype. The game starts up with a brief recap of the story from that first game. And cool, you know what, now I am in the mood for more Yoshi goodness, lay it on me. Kamek and his cronies are at it once again, except instead of just kidnapping the baby Mario Bros, they are stealing any baby they can get their hands on. Oh boy, you're keeping one of them a secret. I can't imagine which one that could be. Oh, the box art just shows all of them. Alright, and as expected, both Mario and Peach get dropped from the sky back onto Yoshi's Island. So now it is up to them to once again save baby Luigi, save the other babies as well, and save the day along the way. The box art shows off the main mechanic this time around. On top of baby Mario making a return, now there are up to 5 different babies to play with, unlocking them throughout the adventure. They all sport their own unique abilities too, like carrying baby Mario lets you run fast, as well as being able to hit these special M blocks. Baby Peach can flutter further and higher, more so if there's a gust of wind under you. Baby Donkey Kong can climb up vines and charge, sort of like a Wario Land-esque dash, which is interesting because baby Wario is here too. Instead of doing a dash though, he holds a magnet that can pull coins towards you, as well as pulling magnetic blocks and platforms. And lastly, even baby Bowser joins you along the way, allowing you to spit fire at the expense of swallowing enemies and making eggs. They all also have different properties to how eggs react when hitting walls, which is neat and all, but this whole concept has one very critical flaw. Do you remember how in Donkey Kong 64, you had multiple Kongs and you can only swap between them at these specific points? Well, that applies here too. You can only change which baby you're holding at these stations. And yes, it's very annoying. It's not the worst thing in the world, it is definitely easier to swallow in a 2D platformer rather than a 3D collectathon, but there were many times that I simply could not get something because I didn't have the right baby on me at the time. Sometimes this idea does lead to a neat combination of powers here and there, but come on, why can't Yoshi just hold all 5 babies at once? I'm already exploring an entire island as a dinosaur with the ability to make egg ammunition by swallowing my foes, but sorry, this is where the realism line is drawn? Okay. The game also constantly reminds you that it's on the DS. The action is spread across both screens at all times. I'm iffy on this whole idea of both screens being used for gameplay on the DS. I get it, I mean the DS was really the only console that could let you do something like that. You got games like Sonic Rush, Contra 4, the other weird Yoshi game, Touch and Go, they all did that, they split the gameplay across both screens. But in my opinion, Yoshi's Island DS is the worst game of its kind to do it. You can swap between which screen you're primarily playing on at any time, and since the devs knew that, they weren't afraid of leaving the chance available to hide stuff right in the middle where you can't see it. This screen gap does make a lot more sense when played on an actual console, rather than just looking at scrunched up footage, but it's still less than desirable. Honestly, the game as a whole has this weird lack of polish. At its core, it is certainly more Yoshi's Island. You platform through levels that have an emphasis on exploration, you collect a bunch of red coins and flowers, you get graded at the end of each stage, you get hit and then you hear crying. It's more Yoshi's Island, alright, for better or for worse. Ooh, and that's right, with 5 babies, now there are 5 unique baby crying sounds too. Hell yeah, dude. But I don't know, the game just sorta feels off at times. There are a handful of brand new enemies, and something about them just doesn't look right. They don't look like they fit in with the returning enemies that are essentially just reused sprites. And okay, what the hell is this? This is supposed to be a kangaroo. Apparently, this is like the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. This is like the second worst kangaroo in existence, I think. The same can be said for the bosses too. Man, they look out of place. You can't mix the old style with the new style and pretend it's the same thing. It doesn't work that way. The music is a bit rough too. It's not terrible, you know, it tries to be all happy and peppy like the original, even doing the leitmotif thing of remixing the main theme throughout the entire soundtrack, but the songs just miss their mark in my opinion. But comparatively, oh, we'll get there. A rocket ship, what? This game also, by far, has one of the worst levels I have ever experienced in a platformer. The cave that never ends. Look at this. Look at how disgustingly slow this is. I feel offended. A few minutes in, there is this part here where the jump just for some reason gets a little finicky if you're running down this hill. Oh, what's that? You died? You gotta deal with this molasses speed again. It's terrible. Really now, I feel that many of the levels here outstay their welcome. There are only 5 worlds this time around, instead of 6 previously, but the levels are longer to compensate, which by the end of the game, I was really just praying for the credits. It's not that I hate the game or anything like that, but it's just a slog by the end of it. Oh, suddenly Bowser shows up. Okay, hey, what's up? What's up, man? Looking terrible. My god, dude, what is this outline? Apparently now, Bowser and Kamek traveled from the future on a quest to steal 7 star children, which I guess can grant the power to rule the universe. And believe me, his appearance here is about as jarring as I've explained it. He's here now. I guess he's my target. Let's go. Eventually, Yoshi and crew make their way to Bowser's castle, I guess. You see, baby Bowser ended up having a falling out with his future self, so that's why he's on our side. Well, until you get to the end at least, and then he wants to fight. Typical whiny child, never knowing what they actually want. I think that's what they're going for. I don't know. His fight is pretty identical to the one from the first game, so naturally he goes down pretty quickly. Oh man, the big boy is here! You hit him with some eggs, and then he gets big, because of course he does, and then all the Yoshis team up to throw even more eggs at him, and that's it. His plan has been thwarted, and then... babies! So it turns out that all of the heroes were actually the star children in question, including the newly born baby Yoshi. Aw, how precious. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I'm assuming the way baby Wario looks and the way that a regular baby looks, you could probably assume one of them is a little more special than the other. You didn't need to kidnap all the regular babies, but hey, what do I know? I wasn't there. So yeah, that's Yoshi's Island DS. It's just okay. There are some additional minigames in there as well, but like the main game, they're just okay. Nothing about this really stands out aside from the baby mechanic, which I said before, isn't as well thought out as it should be. It was pretty neat at the time having a proper sequel to Yoshi's Island that wasn't Yoshi's story, but nowadays it just sort of feels like a fan-made sequel to the original. Eh well. As I mentioned before, no one really talks about this game, and now I can see why. But that didn't stop Nintendo from trying again, because 8 years later, for the 3DS, we got another sequel. Yoshi's New Island. Oh boy, there goes that word new again. Nintendo just couldn't handle themselves. So, the story of this one. So, the original Yoshi's Island is canon now, okay? So, accept that. At the end of that one, the stork delivers baby Mario and Luigi to their parents. Psych! He delivered them to the wrong couple! Yeah, oops. Kamek sees his chance, snatches up Luigi once again, Mario falls to the surface below once again. I don't know if babies can experience deja vu, but you may as well start them off while they're young. However, to be fair, Mario doesn't fall where he was before. He falls onto a new island. Oh, that's why it's called that. So I guess Yoshi's Island DS is not canon, after all? We've never seen Baby Wario since. Who knows what mischief he's getting into? Yoshi's New Island plays exactly the same as the 2 games prior, just with the idea of multiple babies being gone, and instead we have the return of a single baby, and I will say that is for the best. This game plays it safe throughout the entire thing, opting more to give off a feeling of, oh yeah, I remember that thing, rather than, oh, that new thing that I don't like, that's not a kangaroo. But peppered in here and there is a little bit of newness, like the transformations do return, this time in the form of motion-controlled challenges. They're okay, they're definitely not as enjoyable as they used to be, but credit for being different. The Superstar shows up once again too. You see, this was used in previous games to transform Baby Mario, and he would become superpowered, and it was awesome. A hero since he was a baby, he was. It shows up here too, but instead, Yoshi gets the power-up instead, controlling almost exactly the same. I don't know why you stole the spotlight from Baby Mario, except these segments always end with a super fast flying section that just stops. That's a sharp drop, honestly. Since the developers opted to stay safe conceptually, that means that more effort was put into polishing the core adventure. The game is actually pretty fun. It's difficult too, going for perfect scores in levels is tough. That is how it was in the DS game too, but here's the thing. The adventure here goes back to 6 worlds of shorter levels, like the original had, making it a much friendlier romp to replay if you did want to get perfect scores. They somehow messed up the control too. If you're standing still, there's like an extra half second of buffer time before you're ready to shoot an egg. But not if you're moving just a split second beforehand. It is easy to work around, but this shouldn't be a thing in the first place. The original game flows so well, and it is amazing how much an extra half second of animation can nearly completely ruin that. The bosses take a major hit too. Half of the bosses are just Kamek, and the other half are just really easy. Meh. The only real new gimmick that's here comes in the form of egg dozers. One swallow of a giant enemy, Yoshi absolutely destroys his butt. Oh no. And then he has access to one giant egg to shoot around and cause destruction. Occasionally, you'll stumble onto some metal egg dozers too, used to roll across the floor and allow you to sink to the bottom of water sections. Not really sure how that works because you're not physically connected to the egg, so I don't know how you're still sinking. I'm asking too many questions. It's a neat idea and all, but like the Mega Mushroom of a similarly named new franchise, it's purely contextual. This didn't need to be here and nothing of value would really be lost. Except for this image of a huge Yoshi about to poo out a giant egg. That will live on in infamy. But the strongest talking point for the game comes in its presentation. Rather than going for a pixel aesthetic that you're used to, instead, New Island goes for a, man, I don't even know how to explain it. It's a weird look. It's like a mix of watercolor for the backgrounds, but also 3D models of the main characters, but they also have like this weird watercolor texture on top of them, but nothing really meshes here. It does look better on the console you're playing it on, which is something that can be said for nearly all 3DS games. And while I do appreciate seeing a bunch of familiar enemies in 3D for the first time, bleh. And then there's the soundtrack. Huh. I do want to say that I think there is a big misconception here regarding the soundtrack. As a whole, it really isn't that bad. Some of the music Some of the music is really bad. I've accepted that. There are good pieces of music here though, and they're actually pretty good. But whoever decided to use kazoos, man, they really should be fired. The end of the game is awfully familiar too. You make your way to Bowser Jr., you beat him, he turns big, and you beat him again. And you may have noticed that I didn't talk about the final boss music of Yoshi's Island DS, and it's for the same reason I'm not going to say much about the final boss music in New Island. They didn't even come close to attempting to replicate the awesome rock feeling of the original. It's actually kind of embarrassing, and as a result, I really just got nothing else to say on it. To be fair, it would be hard to top that original piece. Boy, that was good. And just like that, baby Luigi is saved once again. What? Suddenly warping through space and time? What the okay. Bowser's here again. What the? So, his fight is basically the same as the baby counterpart? Warping through space and time, that's the best you could come up with? What the hell? So baby Luigi is then saved, for real this time. The babies are brought to their actual parents now, hopefully, and then the credits roll. My god, that is one of the wildest endings in Nintendo's history. Oh, and this is kinda neat. Throughout the adventure, a mysterious pipe figure offers to help you out if you're having a tough time. It turns out that that is actually Mario from the future. What's with all this time travel going on all of a sudden? I guess Mario traveled back to make sure he continues to exist in his time. We're getting into some Back to the Future stuff up in here. Great Scott. So yeah, to answer the question that was posed at the start of the video, there are specific reasons why these games aren't remembered all that fondly, if at all. People just know they exist, and that's not good. I will say though that the original is still the king. Yoshi's Island, man, this game is so damn good. I don't take back anything that I said. It just would have been nice if the sequels that have a similar name were that good as well. And that's just not the timeline that we're on. And I know what you're saying now, what about Yoshi's Woolly World? Give it time, I'll get to it. Yoshi as an overall franchise is actually a really weird one. When it comes to the green dinosaur, I have plenty of material to talk about down the line. But until then, could I get a picture of the really huge Yoshi again? Thank you. Nintendo, what the hell were you thinking? It had to be done. Yoshi's legacy is more or less defined by one game, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Sure, he's made plenty of appearances in other games over the years, a bunch of them being spin-offs, but let's not fool ourselves here. Yoshi's Island is the Yoshi game. And man, this game is an absolute gem, I cannot say it enough. Maybe it's the pure nostalgia talking here, but I would go as far as to say that this is damn near perfection. This is a brilliant combination of excellent music, great gameplay mechanics, a fantastic art style, and a pretty cute novel concept. I get it, Baby Mario crying is super annoying, well then just don't get hit. I mean, that's a pretty good motivation to not be bad at the game, I would think. In my opinion, they hit every single nail on the head so well that it must be super difficult for them to try to recapture that magic in future games, as evidenced by future games just failing at trying to do that. Apologies to the three of you out there who really adore Yoshi Topsy-Turvy on Game Boy Advance. So we've already gone over the portable Yoshi's Island games, and long story short, they're not terrible, but they certainly suffer from living under the original game's shadow. They just try too hard to imitate the SNES classic. But nowadays, we have two games in this franchise that try to continue on the legacy of Yoshi's Island, while also trying to step out of the shadow at the same time. Yoshi's Woolly World on the Wii U, and Yoshi's Crafted World on the Switch. Good Feel, secretly one of Nintendo's more consistent third-party developers. Seemingly out of nowhere with Wario Land Shake It on the Wii, this company created an identity for themselves almost immediately. If they can nail anything, it's creating an entire game based purely on an art style, tied with mechanics that just feel good. Oh yeah, and they made a handful of Street Pass games on the 3DS, Why not? They actually have a pretty odd overall game lineup. I mean, who can forget Luxley's lineup for the DSi? Oh, that actually looks pretty cool. After the success of Kirby's Epic Yarn, well, why not do practically the same thing with Yoshi? Twice! Both of these games are good. They're really good. So instead of doing the typical spiel of doing a solo video on each, going super in depth into why these games are good, I'm thinking we have a bit of a grudge match. It's wool versus cardboard, yarn versus paper, Yoshi versus Yoshi. Let's do it. I think the best way to go about this is to lock it down to 5 different categories: plot, egg, collectibles, cute factor, and music. The 5 things that every game should be graded on. Despite being the same character and both games being developed by the same company, they're actually surprisingly super different. This should be pretty interesting. Let's begin. So the story of these are one element where both games are pretty similar. In Woolly World, the Yoshi clan are just relaxing before Kamek comes out of nowhere, turns most of the little dinosaurs into bundles of yarn, and scatters them across the lands. So it's up to you to rescue them all. And then in Crafted World, it actually takes a bit of influence from Yoshi's story and the whole super happy tree, which is that's still just a great name. All of the Yoshis are hanging out by the Sundream Stone when, once again, Kamek comes through, this time with Bowser Jr. in tow. And after a bit of a struggle, the Sundream's gems get scattered, and now it's up to you to get them back before the bad guys get them. Bowser Jr. does show up in Woolly World as well, but he's relegated to the very end of the adventure, just like in Yoshi's Island. And yes, that is Bowser Jr., not Baby Bowser. Even New Island got this wrong. Okay, so listen, this is not Baby Bowser. That is Bowser Jr. Clearly, this is something worth being angry about. And don't even get me started on the Koopa Kids from Mario Party. I don't even think Nintendo knows where they fit in. So yeah, the stories are pretty similar, but it's exactly what's needed to put a couple of colorful dinosaurs on an adventure. And I can certainly get down with that a whole lot more than, oh, we dropped Baby Mario. Again. It's pretty close, but I'm gonna go ahead and give the notch to Woolly World, just because I'm pretty surprised at how incredibly violent it is. There may not be blood or anything like that, but the Yoshis literally get chopped up into pieces, and then they have this little happy face slapped onto them. It's pretty messed up. Point Woolly. Next up, egg. Okay, look, I can explain. What I want to talk about here is actually the gameplay mechanics, aka the tried and true egg mechanic that Yoshi has been using for years. Both games are structured in a pretty similar way. You travel from point A to point B in side-scrolling levels that are filled to the brim with obstacles that are meant to be taken out by taking these eggs, or in Woolly World's case, yarn balls, and throwing them wherever you see fit. Woolly follows Island's approach by once again using the rotating reticle, and I love this mechanic just as much as I did in that original game. But for as much as I do really enjoy using it, I know others just never got behind it. Fair enough, you know, you gotta be pretty good at angles if you want to get a precise shot. And hey, you gotta remember, this game released on the Wii U. As a result, you can use the Wii Remote, and using that option, you now have the ability to tilt where you want the egg to go, which made things an absolute breeze. There are many times throughout the adventure where precision is damn near a necessity, and I love this extra level of control. Now, Crafted World, on the other hand, actually feels really similar to the N64's Yoshi's Story, another similarity there. You see, in that game, you had absolute control over your throw. You can pinpoint where exactly you want it to go, and it'll go there. That is the same exact thing here. But it's not just a cute throwback, it's actually built around the game's worlds, having objects in the foreground and background that contain some coins or even some secrets. And sure, in relation, it does make the act of getting the egg from your hand to the desired target take a longer amount of time, but the sheer curiosity of keeping on the lookout for objects in 3D space in a 2D platformer was consistently really cool. The game often plays with the camera as well, placing items about with the sole intention of hiding special things behind them. It's just, man, it's really neat. And actually, you know what this reminds me of? Kirby 64 and Klonoa, 2D platformers that consistently rotated the camera. And okay, we don't get camera rotations to the same level as that, but what we have now is another major 2D platformer that gives off the vibe of playing in a 3D world. And that is absolutely awesome. And between both of these games, all of this was accomplished with no crying babies in sight. Very nice. Woolly World is fun, really fun, don't get me wrong, but the point has to go to Crafted World for the originality alone. And aside from just the egg throwing mechanics, the games do share a few similar concepts, like having these dedicated segments that completely change up the play control. Each game does handle things slightly differently, but it's the same core idea, and they both handle them just fine. Woolly World has these transformation segments within levels as a means to collect more items, while Crafted World more so leans to having individual levels that are based on these vehicles. They offer up some of the strongest challenges in the entire adventure. They're all score-based, and oh man, getting a perfect score is absolute hell. And I especially love the Go-Go Yoshi. Look how ugly it is. It's adorable. But alrighty, next up we're looking at collectibles. Yoshi games usually offer a bunch in their levels, and these games are no different. Flowers, red coins, maintaining perfect health, both games more or less go for the same thing. Yeah, Woolly World goes for beads instead of coins because it just came after Epic Yarn. Why not rip that game off a little bit? That's all visual, they're the same thing. It's pretty neat too, actually. Hidden within each level amongst the beads are these patches that are used to create stamps. Oh boy, I can't wait to post this on Miiverse. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It still hurts. Easily, the best collectible in Woolly World has to be the yarn bundles. You collect all 5 in a level and then you unlock a brand new Yoshi design. Yeah, this is clearly the best. Sorry, Miiverse stamps. All of the major items in both games are rewards for a ridiculous amount of exploration. Like, your best bet is to touch every single wall that you run across and jump where there may be nothing, as that's the only way to learn where everything is hidden. Woolly World even has the audacity to hide items in walls far too often. A bunch of the levels in the game are also these large multi-path mazes too, making full completion sometimes super annoying. At least you can purchase this equipable badge before every level to help you out, so that's nice. Crafted World doesn't have something similar to that badge, but to be honest, that's because the game doesn't need it. It's established right from the get-go that items will be all around you, and with levels that are built around that idea, I never really ran into that same level of frustration that Woolly World often provides. No. Instead, the frustration with Crafted World comes from the NPCs asking you to complete levels like 5 times, at least. So you got your initial playthrough, a likely second playthrough to clean up items that you missed out on the first time, playing a level in reverse to catch Poochie Pups as fast as you can, collecting just a stupid amount of souvenirs that these little block dudes ask you to find, one item at a time. You know, it'd be nice if they told you everything in one go, but no, I'll go get this one thing, then I'll go back, and then I'll get 5 of this one thing because you really want to see it for some stupid reason, then I'll go do this one thing. Oh, we're done. Okay, cool, time to do it again. And just when you think you're done, there's some hide and seek stuff that pops up at the end too. It never ends. But you know, it's fine. I'm more than happy to complete this stupid, simple magnet puzzle for the 6th time. What this boils down to is both games are really fun, but damn near torture to 100%. It's certainly easier to do in Woolly World, but that's really only because you have the option to pick up that badge. And also, it's nowhere near as padded as Crafted is, but honestly, I think I will give the point to Crafted. It all still boils down to that 3D level design, man. Sure, the replaying of levels sucks. It really sucks. But to me, the way that I see it, the souvenirs are purely side content, while the rest of the regular collectibles are parts of the main game. And it is much more frustrating trying to go for the regular collectibles in Woolly World. So yeah, there you go. Point Crafted. Next up, cuteness. Each game here goes for their own unique sense of style, and they both utilize it really well. Woolly World doesn't use the yarn aesthetic for gameplay purposes as much as Kirby did before him, but it's still very clearly a massive world built out of fabric, and it looks fantastic. Crafted World, on the other hand, goes full-on arts and crafts project. The amount of real-life objects used to create these landscapes is incredible, and I was constantly surprised seeing how these areas were, dare I say, crafted. Ha! Alright, this one, I'll acknowledge is a purely subjective debate. One could definitely argue that Crafted World does a whole lot more with its style, but that would also kinda downplay just how good Woolly World looks. Both games picked a really unique art style and then ran with it to levels that you couldn't imagine. And more importantly, they both make sure to emphasize just how cute the Yoshis are. Yes, that is very, very important. Woolly has dozens of different styled Yoshis to play with, while Crafted has dozens of different costumes to play in. Man, I can't decide, they're both so adorable. They both also include Poochie, which to be honest, they should both get a point for that alone. The boss battles are a bit cooler in Crafted World in my opinion. When the bosses form, there's like this stop motion effect that plays out showing them getting created from real world objects, and that's pretty awesome. Woolly World does do something similar with its style, again harkening back to Yoshi's Island, but when directly comparing the two, yeah, Crafted does a whole lot more with the arts and crafts aesthetic. Also, you refight a bunch of the bosses in Woolly World, that just sucks. Ah man, it's really a tough call. I don't really know. Oh wait a minute, that's right. Woolly World is responsible for treating society to fluffy amiibo. Point Woolly. Point Woolly. Oh boy, I mean, it was a tight race. Really it was. Woolly World goes for this whole, good soundtrack approach with this crazy concept. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Catchy music, I think it is. Like, nearly every single level has a great track to accompany it. Meanwhile, Crafted World, oh boy, I gotta hand it to them. They were just so bold and daring. They decided to go with the bad soundtrack approach instead. Truly remarkable. It goes for the Yoshi story idea of taking the main theme and making a ton of remixes of it, but it's just not good. No lie, when I was playing through Crafted World, I was listening to the soundtrack of Woolly World. I'm not even joking. And seriously, the coin slot theme, how did that make it into the final product? Well, alrighty then. So for those of you who are keeping track, Woolly World has 3 points, Crafted World has 2. Both of these games are really good, I can't stress that enough. If you have the available consoles, I highly recommend you play them, but I just gotta give the edge to Woolly World. That game is something else, man. However, what if you don't have a Wii U like most of the population, but you have a 3DS? Well, do I have the solution for you? They named this one Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, meaning I gotta put it next to the P's in my collection instead of the Y's. Thanks, Nintendo, I hate it. Now obviously when comparing the games directly, it doesn't look as polished, or in Yoshi's instance, fluffy, and it does add some pretty nothing extra content with the Poochie levels, but thankfully, this port doesn't mess with the core adventure like how the abilities messed with the port of Epic Yarn. Now this game, I understand why it got ported to the 3DS. The Switch wasn't a thing yet, the Wii U was failing terribly. Why not put an awesome 2D platformer on a console that everyone has access to? And maybe as like a way to overshadow the other 3DS Yoshi game, who knows? They also added a handful of these adorable stop-motion movies made with the amiibo. These are awesome. I'm telling you, man, with stuff like this and the Pikmin short movies, there need to be more animations with Nintendo things. And actually, did you know, you probably didn't, by using the amiibo you can unlock extra color choices for almost every single unlockable costume. I can hear your mind-blowing explosions from here. I know, I'm such a sham. This wasn't a grudge match at all. This was totally clickbait. I know you must be totally angry with me. That's absolutely fine. I'm gonna take it upon myself to punish myself. Don't worry about it. I know just the thing. I'm gonna listen to the Crafted World soundtrack some more. Oh god, it's torture. Bowser is one of Nintendo's most diverse characters ever. Just look at 2021 for example. By the summer, he's gonna be donning pants and a sweet flame cap to go and play some golf with his buddies, but in February... Oh, he's mildly upset. Bowser's Fury plus Super Mario 3D World, which is realistically what it should be called if you really ask yourself, is the latest and arguably most interesting Wii U to Switch port Nintendo has done yet. Say what you will about the whole idea of re-releasing older games for full price, but make no mistake about it, it is absolutely no surprise that Mario, of all franchises, was going to get the star treatment when it comes to this situation. Let's not forget last time they did this, where they introduced the world to Peachette, and the internet's never been the same since. Just the mere concept of a Wii U port is enough to get some people all riled up nowadays, or should I say, furious. And you know what? That's fair. Charging more for the Switch version of Tropical Freeze than what it was initially on the Wii U when they just added Funky Kong and that's it, was certainly not much of a funky move. Some games like Captain Toad and Hyrule Warriors did receive additions that were a bit more substantial, but it really wasn't until Pikmin 3 Deluxe's new side stories, or even Xenoblade Chronicles' entire post-game story, where it seemed like Nintendo was actually putting in a decent amount of effort finally. Yeah, the latter was a Wii port, not a Wii U port, but hey, my point still stands. And that leads us to now, Bowser's Fury, without a doubt the most ambitious edition of them all. As someone who was already around during the Wii U days to already buy these games once before at full price, it does kinda sting that it took this long to get to a point where double dipping is actually kinda worth it instead of just doing it for the sake of it, but hey. At least it's 3D World this time around. Maybe people will finally give the game a proper shot. This was actually the announcement I was the most excited for during that big Mario 35th Anniversary Direct. Now don't get me wrong here, having a portable Mario Galaxy is really cool and I am super excited for Mario's public execution on March 31st, aren't we all? But going on that adventure through the Sprixie Kingdom again in 3D World and this whole entirely new mysterious Bowser's Fury mode? Oh yeah man, sign me up, I am in. I just love this game so much, man. I know opinions on it have shifted plenty over the years since its initial release, but the amount of complaining about this not being a, quote, real 3D Mario game was always so absurd to me. Sure, on the topic of ambition, it certainly seemed less ambitious for Mario's first big HD adventure to be a sorta sequel to a 3DS game, but I always looked at 3D World for what it was and not for what it wasn't. And boy, with that mindset, I had a fantastic time with this game, and all these years later, I have such fond memories of it. The amount of new ideas tossed at you every few minutes with characters that feel great to control, it does the same exact thing Galaxy was doing, just with a more traditional level design format and a fixed camera. I like Galaxy a whole lot more, but this is also very nice. And also, the one-up trick in level 2 still confirms that lives are a dated concept in gaming nowadays, so that's also nice. Oh, one of the best soundtracks ever featured in a Mario game too, by the way. Oh man, Double Cherry Pass has been consistently stuck on my head since 2013. It is so good. Regarding this deluxe version, it doesn't really change all that much, but the additional speed for the characters cannot be understated. I didn't even think the original game was that slow, but then I played as Toad in the Switch version and I'm stunned. Oh my god, he's fast. Princess Peach, the slowest of the characters, is now faster than Toad was in the Wii U version. That's incredible. Some UI elements were changed around as well. I know that's pretty boring in the grand scheme of things, but I do find little modifications like this kind of interesting. Look, they removed the X next to the player life count. Clearly this was important. Also, you can now move around a cursor with gyro aiming to replace the gamepad touchscreen functionality, and that is something I am definitely a fan of. I always hated that I could play the Wii U version with the Pro Controller, but once you get to one of those levels that needs the microphone or the touchscreen, the game literally forbids you from playing them until you turn that controller on. That's dumb, and I'm glad to see it's fixed. That's not entirely without sacrifice though, because you can no longer do the Wii U thing where you can blow into the microphone to blow away the little mini Goombas. So, trash. But the question still remains, is it worth full price? Now that Odyssey is out there fulfilling that real 3D Mario game desire, maybe 3D World can have the second shot in the mainstream that it deserves, that it should have deserved the first time around. I mean, my hot take is I like 3D World more than Odyssey, but hey, that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about it some other time. Put down your pitchforks. But with all that being said, Bowser's one angry lad this time around. Bowser's Fury is often considered to be theoretical DLC for Mario Odyssey, more so than 3D World, due to how different the playstyle is. And you know what? I can totally get behind that. I mean, it starts off the same way. Mario plummets from the sky and lands headfirst into the ground. He is developing a knack for this. Also, it's kinda taking cues from Sonic, so I can respect that. That inked M on the floor though in the opening, nice touch. Direct reference to Super Mario Sunshine. I like it. When you really think about it, this is probably the closest we'll ever get to Sunshine 2, which, you know, that kind of stings, but I'll take what I can get. So the premise of this adventure is pretty straightforward, I think. One day, Mario stumbles upon a portal that leads to a new land, Lake Lapcat. And thanks to a brief synopsis by Bowser Jr., it seems like he was painting his big old dad, but accidentally used too much black ink, which ended up corrupting him, making him huge and kinda pissed off every 5 minutes. It's actually a pretty similar plot to Paper Mario Color Splash, which is kind of strange, but okay. But ultimately, it is still a mindless plot, and while normally all you need is that minor push to get Mario to do some platforming, boy, that Fury Bowser stuff is super cool. But we'll get to that. And right off the bat, once you really get the game started, yeah, this is now once again a free roaming open world with full camera control and the ability to go wherever you want to tackle objectives in any order you desire. It is a stark contrast to 3D World, but having an open world with 3D World's control style, it's actually pretty cool. The comparisons to Odyssey are very obvious, but honestly, I think I enjoy this setup a lot more. Lake Lapcat is set up with a series of different themed islands, each one having a handful of missions attached to them, and 0 loading times to travel to any of them. You just go off in a single direction for long enough and then bam, new location, often with a new music track to accompany it. Getting major Jak and Daxter vibes from this, and that is pretty cool. For all the flack the Switch gets for its lack of power, this is really impressive. Even being able to just go really high and then look over at the vast landscape and see that those places, you can go there, that's really cool. Something that I feel like the Switch you wouldn't normally expect. But the real kicker to me is that for each mission, the island seamlessly changes when you're not looking, rearranging obstacles and platforms to offer a brand new challenge. I streamed my playthrough of this over on my Twitch page, and it was consistently surprising me that, like, legit, you can get one of the cat shines, walk away a little bit and turn the camera around, turn the camera back to the island, and boom, new stuff. That's incredible. On your journey, you're off to collect, like I said before, cat shines. Interesting return to the shine formula, but okay. There are 100 of them in total, and they are all based on actual challenges. One of my biggest issues with Odyssey was a lot of the filler stuff that I think made a completion run feel pretty bloated. But here you got precise platforming, bringing a key to a locked cage, time limit obstacle courses, climbing tall towers. It is the bite-sized gameplay style that we're all familiar with, just with the added element of truly feeling like you can do anything you want and go anywhere you want at any given time, with little to no filler. It's still there, but not that much. Aw yeah, and Plessy shows up too. You just jump on whenever you want to and you start moving. I love Plessy so much. There are so many little nooks and crannies spread throughout Lake Lapcat as well. There is such a sense of wonder from exploring that I haven't really experienced in a long time. Odyssey. Yeah, I think Odyssey was the last time I felt that. Also, everything is now cats. I don't know if you noticed that part. There's Goomba cats, Piranha Plant cats, Bullet Bill cats. It's a little strange, for sure. Seeing a Koopa with a fur texture is pretty unsettling, I will admit, but all in all, I'm okay with this. I'm assuming the next Mario game is going to be dog-themed. Who needs a PlayStation 5 when the Switch is clearly powerful enough to handle both open worlds and fur technology all at the same time? Hell, we clearly don't even need a Switch Pro. Ah, truly incredible. But then, the expected happens. Bowser gets pissed off. Dude, this entire concept is crazy. There's like this heavy rock music that starts playing. Fire rains from the sky. A flame breath can blast you from nearly across the entire map. Oh god, during all this time, the normal cats turn evil as well. Catches me off guard every time, but I get it, you know, it's revenge. There was this one time I took a little baby kitten in the game and tossed it off a cliff and it disintegrated, so I get it, they're all pissed. This is my fault. Still didn't expect this though. The level of intensity coming from Fury Bowser and all this flame and destruction, it is so unexpected for a Mario game like this, but I love it. I love it so much, and thankfully we have the chance to combat this evil threat. Collect enough cat shines, you can open up this giant bell, and Mario can go Super Saiyan. Or, because it's also in a cat suit, this is Mario going Super Saiyan. Yeah, I'm not apologizing for that one. And now it's just basically a giant kaiju fight against a pissed off Bowser. This dynamic is so absurd, but it is so cool being able to fight Bowser in the land you were just platforming in. It's really cool. Some of the cat shines are only collectible while Fury Bowser's around though, so that's a bit annoying because normally it is a timed event. Using a Bowser amiibo can summon him whenever you want, so I was able to breeze through these final few shines pretty easily, but if you don't own one, then yeah, that final push to completion, that can kinda suck. Probably exciting for speedrunners, plotting out their paths in such a way that they're always at Bowser blocks when Fury Bowser awakens, but for the casual playthrough, not so much. Like, there's also this golden platform that shows up with a whopping 5 shines on it that only shows up when Fury Bowser's around, but you can only get one of them at a time. You get one, Bowser gets tired, you wake him back up, the platform comes back down. This mode gets a whole lot right, but it's not without its dumb moments. Otherwise though, yeah, Bowser's Fury rocks. Retooling some of the traditional sandbox Mario mechanics and blending it together with a huge seamless open world, you tie in a fantastic soundtrack and a continuing blend of the Mario and Bowser Jr. buddy dynamic that we've seen in the RPGs, and we damn near have a masterpiece here. And it's a side mode. But I mean, clearly they're planting the seeds for something in the future, right? Odyssey 2? Hard to say, but I highly doubt this is the last we'll see of something like this. Hell, given the purely challenge-based nature of the cat shines and the large singular world, the more time passes, I would almost go as far as to say I like this more than the entirety of Odyssey. Certainly more replayable at least, in my opinion, and it has me really excited for the future of Mario. But back to the earlier question, does that justify the $60 price tag attached to 3D World? Well, that's always subjective, but I do understand the concern. I love the main game. I love 3D World, but I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. And before, any updates to Wii U games with ports were designed around the game that's being ported. Now we have an older linear Mario game with a new open world Mario game attached to it, so yeah, it's a bit of an odd situation. It's pretty short as well. Bowser's Fury takes about 3 hours to see the credits and then another 3 hours to fully complete. It's highly replayable once again, so that definitely adds more worth to it all, but if you're a one and done type of gamer, that is definitely something to consider. Bowser's Fury is easily, without a doubt, the most enticing addition to a Wii U game the Switch has seen yet, but those are still some things worth asking before taking the plunge yourself. Also, 3D World is still amazing. I don't care if you liked it or not during the Wii U days, play it again. It's really, really good. In my eyes, you get 2 great games all in one package, and thankfully, unlike Super Mario 3D All-Stars and Super Mario Bros. 35, this game will not be getting delisted at the end of March 2020. And that's awesome. I'm sure they wanted to do it, but then they probably remembered during development, oh yeah, that's right, this is the game where in level 2, you can get infinite 1-ups. It's legitimately impossible to kill it. But realistically, it is pretty cool to know that the Switch is home to many of Mario's greatest adventures. All we need now is Galaxy 2, and we'll be right as rain. Maybe by the end of the year? I don't know. I'm getting sick of waiting, but it is what it is. Mario, happy anniversary. I hope you survive your public execution on March 31st, 2020. I know I'll be watching, but for everyone else out there, to say being a Paper Mario fan has been an absolute roller coaster for years with no end in sight whatsoever would be an understatement. Coming into this video, you already know that the 1,000-year door is going to be part of the conversation somewhere. And yeah, it is hard to talk about anything with this franchise without some group of people yelling those 4 words at you trying to prove a point. Reception to the Origami King upon its reveal was definitely a lot more positive than Color Splashes, but that opinion with TTYD, for many, still stands. Though, to be honest, getting a new Nintendo game announced randomly on Twitter during a time where the world is currently made of bricks, then yeah, you know, that is enough to get anybody super ecstatic. Sticker Star is not good. I'm glad I can finally get that hot take off my chest. The reality is, the Paper Mario franchise has been going in this weird direction for most of its life now. When you consider Super, which is also not a traditional RPG, we have 4 action-adventure games and 2 traditional RPGs. This franchise is not an RPG one anymore. I know that reality may sting, but that's where we are. Now, I really enjoyed Color Splash. I've said this many times in the past, so I'm not coming into this video with an anti-Paper Mario bias. But with the Origami King, enough time has passed that I want to take a look at the game for what it is, rather than what it isn't. It's easy to get caught up in the moment as soon as a game releases and just start hating on it, and we're not going to be doing that today. We will be discussing the infamous interview questions that sparked a lot of that hate, but we'll get to that. Alright, let's see what the Origami King is all about. Already looking at a 10 out of 10. It appears we have a festival gone wrong once again. This time the town is celebrating with origami. But of course, something's not right here. And before long, inside the castle, we see Princess Peach. Looking pretty weird. She's been transformed into origami, and she begins speaking in a very bizarre way. Shouldn't the Mushroom Kingdom unfold? Yeah, no, definitely not. What of those toads? Shouldn't they be silenced for all of eternity? Okay, on that one, yeah, you make a compelling argument. Okay, so on its own, this is actually a pretty interesting premise. We're already acknowledging that the entire world is made of paper, so having the happy world of normal paper being terrorized by folded up ones, that's pretty neat, all things considered. Taking these living characters and folding them up to serve an evil purpose? That's pretty messed up. And if we're gonna forego the idea of brand new species or interesting mix-ups of existing species, then at least having the normal paper be good and the folded paper be bad is something I can totally get behind. And thankfully, on top of that, we finally have someone at the head of all of this evil, King Ollie. The last two titles had their fair share of problems, but relying on Bowser as the main bad guy, that's not interesting in the slightest, I'm sorry. It's something that only the original Paper Mario has really been able to handle super well in my opinion. Ever since that original game, however, having a brand new character to work towards taking down alone makes this adventure a whole lot more compelling. King Ollie is pretty solid. He doesn't really show up too often, but boy, whenever he does, he definitely makes an impact. This also means that Bowser is back to being a side character, which in a Paper Mario game, in my opinion, is definitely where he belongs. I want to see a folded up Bowser as a laptop case. Ollie is also the brother of your new helper, Olivia, which throws some emotional stakes into things as well. That's awesome. Once encountering the evil king for the first time, he fully takes over Peach's castle and surrounds it with a bunch of colored streamers. Whoa, dude, this cutscene, it's actually pretty epic, I'm not gonna lie. We are starting off on a really damn good note here. The series has never really been cinematic before, but I'm totally into this. Aw, look at this. Mario is falling from the sky into a grassland. You see, this is a whole lot more classic Paper Mario than we're giving it credit for. So, okay, fine, it starts off really well, and that's all fine and dandy, but let's get to the main topic that I know a lot of you guys are interested in. The battle system. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, come on now, after years of asking for traditional turn-based battles, they gave us a system that literally requires you to make turns. Be careful what you wish for. Honestly, I am a huge fan of what Origami King provides here. Every encounter plays off like a puzzle. Rather than the strategy being exclusively knowing what moves to perform and when, each turn begins with you simply trying to line up a group of enemies in a specific way to properly utilize your boots or a hammer as your weapon. They start off really straightforward, but later on, they genuinely get really challenging, and I am a big fan of puzzles like this in general, so learning how to successfully move everybody around in one foul swoop, I found this super fun. Learning how to effectively do so rewards you with a power bonus, as well as the opportunity to take everybody out before they even have a chance to attack you. So on top of being fun, I also found them consistently satisfying. There's even this one building back in Toad Town that fully embraces the puzzle side of things with this sort of challenge mode. When you have a battle system that's primarily based on throwing puzzles at you, having stuff like this is perfect. I love this. But if it ever seemed like too much and I wanted to move on, well, there's also the option to spend coins to either add more time to your turn, or you get the crowd of toads to come in and help you out, straight up getting most, if not all of the enemies totally lined up for you. But then this gets into the conversation of if these battles are even worth doing in the first place. All you receive from these battles are coins, and before long, you're overloaded with them, so being able to cheese them with the toads, that option is never out of reach. It's all of the different items that you can purchase, specifically the collectibles, that are super pricey, so at least all of that money is worth something if you're into that stuff. And in regards to leveling up, there may not be experience points, but you do get stronger by finding all of these hearts hidden across the world. Whenever you get one, not only does your max health increase, but after so long, you will gain more powerful as well. I'm actually totally fine with this system because a ton of these hearts are optional. Getting stronger ends up feeling like a reward for all of the exploration that you can do. It's a whole lot better than solely relying on more powerful forms of existing moves. though that is still here. And considering how often I did tap into that massive amount of money that I earned, I would say this provides a stronger incentive to battle than the few games before it, where they did feel totally pointless. This is easily the best battle system since the Thousand Year Door, at the very least. Also, all of the different battle music throughout the game are absolute jams. It was worth battling just to dance a little bit alone. But for the boss battles, things take a much more different, well, turn. You know, it's comedy. Now, because there's only one enemy to take down, the roles get reversed. We're no longer moving tiles with enemies on them, but specific items and actions that put Mario on a path to perform a move of your choice. It's basically like a glorified version of Choo Choo Rocket, and I am living for this. I was a bit more skeptical going into these battles, especially since the major bosses this time around are just things you can find at your local office supply store for $2, but them, as well as the Velumentals, these big elemental monsters that give you special moves along the way, are able to manipulate the board in unique ways for every single fight, and it's actually really damn clever at times. They require you to go into each and every fight with a different strategy. No one boss feels like another, and that is awesome. This was something those original Paper Marios did well too. While definitely more traditional, each boss in those games had to be tackled in a different way, making those encounters a lot more impactful. And I genuinely feel like the bosses in Origami King are just as good. There's also a story reason as to why office supplies are your main obstacles here, and it's really cool. I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's really cool. If you really hate the idea of puzzles being your battle system, then yeah, this entire thing is probably a wash for you. But if you're not against that, then I gotta say, this is great stuff. I love this battle system. And hey, on top of that, for the first time since Super Paper Mario, I guess, some of the bosses are done in real time. It makes for a really refreshing change of pace, and it's also just cool. Wait a second, got one complaint here. Mario's nose is slightly bigger for some reason. Okay, I'm back on the fence with this one. So yeah, I really enjoy the battle system. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but considering we don't have stickers, cards, real-life objects that are required to take down certain bad guys, it is infinitely better than anything we've gotten in the last, 10 years? It's pretty good. The battle system was arguably one of the most controversial parts about this entire game. Outside of that, yeah man, it's pretty fantastic. Okay, first and foremost, yes, you can pet the dog. I figured we should get that out of the way. It's really best to consider these newer Paper Mario games as adventure games rather than pure RPGs. And with that context, oh man, was this game ever a blast. All of the worlds are so varied and brightly colored. The soundtrack is genuinely one of the best Nintendo's produced in years. Dude, the Sniff City theme has been stuck in my head for weeks and it won't go away, and I don't want it to go away because it is so good and catchy. And the most important thing of all, the moment-to-moment gameplay is consistently engaging, with these holes that you can fill with confetti, toads all over the place with funny little quips upon their rescue. And while the game does for the most part put you in that typical linear fashion, pushing you into the obvious direction you need to go to progress, there are also a few proper dungeons that feel almost Zelda-esque with their design, as well as a couple of wide open areas that are all about exploring at your own pace and solving puzzles within, which were easily some of my favorite moments in the entire journey. Yes, the Thousand Year Door is also super memorable, but let's also not pretend like all of the backtracking that you have to do to succeed is highly engaging gameplay. Okay, sure, we may not be dealing with settings as out there as the earlier games in the series, but these are still some of the most personality-filled locations we've seen since Super. And also, partners are back! Kinda. It's interesting. It's like this weird half step towards the thing we've been asking for years, but in practice, it's totally fine. They kind of assist you in battle, but they are mainly there for story purposes, and once they fulfill said purpose, they go away. That feeling of gathering a crew of people from all these locations that you visit, and some of them having these really depressing backstories, yeah, that's definitely not there, but simply having somebody with you, even if it just provides more variety in the text that pops up, it goes such a long way. You got Bobby the Bob-omb, who's great and should be protected at all cost. He really should. There's Professor Toad, who's pretty humorous, and he's a big hieroglyphics nerd. And then there's the combo of Kamek and Bowser Jr. Having these staple bad guys on your side, that's pretty great. The thing is though, yeah, those are the only partners in this game. But I'm actually okay with how it was pulled off. Previously, Color Splash really relied on its humor, almost to a fault. While the game was definitely hilarious at times, there was nothing really of substance to sink your teeth into. Here in Origami King, we still have plenty of funny haha moments, but not as often. The plot points feel a lot more grounded now, and it makes for an overall much more well-rounded experience. I guess, if anything though, there is no story reason as to why the battle system is the way it is, unlike before where the main gimmick was also incorporated in said battles, but that's hardly a complaint here. It just would have been nice, I guess, to know why am I dealing with rings here. That I don't understand, but it's fun, so I guess it'll be fine. Point being, Paper Mario The Origami King is fantastic, and if you are not so upset about not getting the 1000-Year Door 2 that you can't possibly look past that, then this game comes highly recommended. 64 and 1000-Year Door are still the best in my opinion, but this is definitely up there. And maybe if Sticker Star and Color Splash never even existed, people probably wouldn't be as upset about all of these changes as they actually are. That perspective really changes things. Sticker Star burned a lot of people. Okay, fine. Let's talk about the interview. Kensuke Tanabe, employee at Nintendo for years and producer of The Origami King. He should probably keep his mouth shut, to be honest. After the game's release, interviews are starting to show up online that gave some insight into the game's development, with such classic lines such as, "It's no longer possible to modify Mario characters or create original characters that touch on the Mario universe." And coming hot off the heels of the Sticker Star interview that indicated that Shigeru Miyamoto wasn't all that interested in having a compelling story, all of this kinda comes off as, despite giving us a really damn good game with The Origami King, they still seem very tone deaf to the things that people actually want to see. They broke a system that didn't need fixing with Sticker Star, and then fixed said broken system in the 2 games that followed after. But considering at this point the Mario and Luigi series is also potentially dead, we have a Mario RPG void that has yet to be filled, and I think that's what hurts the most. Wait a second, is that Peach from Paper Mario 64? It's the same exact sprite. I mean, that's cool and all, a good bit of fan service, but are we pretending as if those original games didn't happen, or not? Clearly, their current way of going about things is working out totally fine for them. The Origami King will go on to be a massive success, but still, it doesn't really resemble what made those original games so fondly remembered. It's simply the best version of the formula that Sticker Star started. And also, the whole lack of original character thing makes absolutely no sense. Some of the first characters you interact with in the Origami King are tree people that sing to you, so they're not even sticking to their own rules. And you know what games are creating original characters on a regular basis? Actual Mario games. Odyssey was all about that. Why not throw those Toast Arena guys into the desert instead of random Shy Guys? Give us a flying segment with Flygons. Oh man, we can't possibly give existing enemies hats anymore. Come on now. I guess on top of that, we'll also ignore how Goom Boss showed up in Super Mario 64 DS as well as Mario Kart DS, but maybe that didn't actually happen. I think I just dreamed it. Honestly, all things considered, the fact that we got the Origami siblings is a miracle. Paper Mario The Origami King is great, but hearing how the game was made just makes me upset. I still highly recommend going on this adventure because it's an awesome time. I just hope the developers finally get around to the whole listening to what the fans want thing. I hear that method also works. I understand and I empathize with the idea that you don't want to buy the game because you don't support the direction the franchise is going. Believe me, I totally get that, but let's be real here. This is Mario. Nintendo's gonna do whatever they want, so you're better off just giving the game a genuine shot and then see how you feel on the other side. Trust me on this. The game is really good. Just don't think about this interview while you're playing the game, because then you'll get really mad. But now I can't help but think about the potential future for this franchise. There aren't that many paper cliches left. We got stickers, we got colors, origami, office supplies. What else can we possibly milk out of paper? Got it. So remember how back in school, back when you were really young, you would wad up pieces of paper and then spit it through a straw? I got it. Paper Mario Spitball Showdown. You heard it here first. Nintendo, I hope you're hiring.